Welcome to leverage ratios. What is a leverage ratio? It measures how risky the firm is, the degree of use of debt facilities to finance resources and operations, and the company's solvency. Okay, pag leverage ratios, commonly may dalawa yan or it revolves on two things. Number one, may debt. Or number two, may fixed cost. Okay? So mapapansin nyo mamaya. Ganon yung pattern pag leverage ratio. What are the two important assumptions? Ang assumption natin is number one, the higher the fixed cost, the higher the risk. Bakit? Kasi kahit mataas or kahit mababa yung sales mo, kailangan mo pa rin i-incur ang fixed cost na yan. So, it's harmful especially when you are not profitable enough or weak yung sales mo for the period. It means na mas risky ka to incur losses. Number two, the higher the debt, the higher the risk. Why? Because, di ba pag debt, there are two characteristics. Number one, you need to pay interest. So, every end of the period, kailangan mong magbayad ng interest. Number two, at the term or at the time of maturity, kailangan mong bayaran ang utang. So, that's why debt is risky. Okay, so let's start. Debt ratio. It measures the proportion of assets financed with debt. So the formula here will be total liabilities divided by total assets. Equity ratio. It measures the proportion of assets financed with equity. So yung formula naman natin, total shareholders' equity divided by total assets or 1 minus debt ratio. The question is, bakit may alternative formula? And bakit pwede natin siyang gamitin? The reason is because of the accounting equation. Kasi di ba, total assets is equals to total liabilities plus total shareholders equity. So, it makes sense. Kasi di ba ang assumption natin, kung hindi siya equity, debt siya. Or kung hindi siya liability, equity siya. We can assume that sa context ng accounting equation. Okay. Debt to equity ratio. It measures the debt relative to amounts of resources provided by owners. The formula here is total liabilities divided by total shareholders equity. Okay? So pag debt to equity, di ba to equity? So ibig sabihin nito, yung denominator natin, yung total shareholders equity. So I hope na sa words pa lang, mapapansin nyo na kung ano yung numerator at ano yung denominator. Okay. Times interest earned ratio. It measures the firm's ability to make contractual interest payments. So, okay. Kaya, di ba, times interest earned. So, the formula here is operating profit or EBIT divided by interest expense. Fixed payment coverage ratio. Ito yung pinahabang times interest earned. It measures the firm's ability to meet all fixed payment obligations. Okay, pansinin nyo. Operating profit plus fixed charges divided by interest expense plus fixed charges. Kung iisipin nyo, para tong times interest earned. Dinagdagan lang natin ng fixed charges sa numerator at denominator. But, ano ba yung ibig sabihin natin ng fixed charges? Fixed charges refers to fixed payments other than interest on a periodic basis. So, yung important word dito, fixed payments. Okay, so ang example dito, kung let's say, meron kang rent, expense, kailangan mo siyang bayaran every year. So that is a fixed charge. Okay, rent, expense. So that is an example of fixed charge. Kasi kailangan mo siyang bayaran on a periodic basis. EBITDA coverage ratio. Okay, ito pa yung medyo pina-extend or pinahabang times interest earned ratio. Ito naman measures the firm's ability to make contractual interest payments using earnings before depreciation and amortization. Kanina, napapansin nyo, operating profit or EBIT. Ito, EBITDA. So, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. The question is, why? Bakit may ganitong ratio? Because when you look at it, depreciation and amortization are non-cash expenses. Okay? Non-cash expenses naman yung depreciation and amortization. So kaya, merong EBITDA coverage ratio. Kasi of course, the goal of this ratio is for us to assess, kaya ba ng company bayaran ang fixed cost? Okay? Or yung mga fixed payment obligations niya. So it makes sense. Ito, financial leverage multiplier. It measures the extent to which the company uses debt in financing asset investment. So the formula here is average assets divided by average equity. Ano yung implication kung mababa yung makukuha natin sa financial leverage multiplier? So let's say na ang answer natin 1. Kung 1 ang makukuha natin sa formula na to, it means that the company does not have any liability at all. So, ang assumption natin, lahat ng assets or lahat ng wala tayong liabilities. Lahat shareholders equity. So, ano yung ibig sabihin nito? Kung mas mataas yung financial leverage multiplier, it means na mas malaki yung liabilities natin or in proportion, mas malaki yung liabilities natin in comparison with shareholders' equity. Operating leverage factor. It measures extent to which a company uses fixed cost in its cost structure. So the formula here is contribution margin divided by operating profit. So, yung operating leverage factor, ito na yung dinidiscuss sa MAS or sa cost management. Okay, so let's now have an illustration. X company presented the following. Okay, so tingnan nyo. Gross profit less administrative and selling expenses of 20,000. So our EBITDA, so earnings before tax, interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization is 60,000 pesos. So less amortization expense of 15,000. Our EBIT is 45,000 pesos. Less interest expense and taxes. So our net income is 28,000 pesos. Pero tingnan nyo, may nakalagay na asterisk. Administrative and selling expenses include yearly rent payment of 10,000 pesos. So ito na yung sinasabi nating fixed charges kanina. Okay, so ano yung mga ihihingi sa atin? Or what is required? Solve for the following. Number 1, times interest earned ratio. Number 2, fixed payment coverage ratio. And number 3, EBITDA coverage ratio. So alam ko, ito yung medyo mahirap i-digest sa lahat ng leverage ratio. So I hope na when we solve this, makikita nyo na kung ano yung differences sa tatlo. So let's start with times interest earned ratio. So for times interest earned ratio, operating profit or EBIT divided by interest expense. So okay, tingnan natin. Yung EBIT natin, 45,000. Ang interest expense natin, 5,000. So 45,000 divided by 5,000. So our times interest earned ratio is 9. Ano yung mas maganda sa times interest earned ratio? Mas maganda na mas malaki yung times interest earned ratio. Kasi kung mababa siya or worst case scenario, mas maliit siya sa 1, then it is a sign na based sa operating profit natin, baka hindi natin mabayaran yung interest. So that is a red flag or warning na yan sa company in terms of risk. Okay, fixed payment coverage ratio. Operating profit plus fixed charges divided by interest expense plus fixed charges. So again ha, yung fixed payment, pina-extend siya na times interest earned. So again, the fixed charges, we have 10,000 pesos yearly rent payment. So that's why 45,000 plus 10,000 divided by 5,000 plus 10,000. So our fixed payment coverage ratio is 3.67. So again, ano yung mas maganda? So in the same way as times interest earned, mas gusto natin or it is more preferable that our fixed coverage or fixed payment coverage ratio is high. So yun yung mas maganda. And finally, EBITDA coverage ratio. Tingnan nyo kung ano yung nagbago. Di ba kanina EBIT, ngayon EBITDA. Okay, so yun yung difference niya. Pag EBITDA coverage, EBITDA. So ano yung EBITDA kanina sa problem? Yung EBITDA or earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, 60,000 pesos. Okay. So 60,000 plus 10,000 divided by 5,000 plus 10,000, our EBITDA coverage ratio is 4.67. So again, in the same way as times interest earned or fixed payment coverage ratio, mas maganda na, mas mataas yung EBITDA coverage ratio natin. So okay, that's all guys, and thank you for watching.